All right. Welcome back to Cry America Outlawed. We have Josh Slocum back with us. He's from the Disaffected Pod. He's the host of the Disaffected Pod, illuminating the abnormal psychology that's becoming the new normal. So I titled this A Disaffected in the Culture War, and I looked back, and you're not going to believe this. It's been almost 4 years since we had you on last time.
God, it has been a long. I can't believe that I've been
I,
doing my show for 5 years now.
I
It doesn't seem that long.
exactly. So so it's been 4 years, and we talked about the culture war back then too. So I mean, it is a fascinating time. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you for coming. Thank you for not using this day of action to leave the podcast world today or walk out of your job and
What?
protest. What?
Is it a day of action
Yeah.
for
What
what?
action? What action are we supposed to be doing
You're
today?
supposed to walk to your congressional office and get Trump impeached. That's
Is that
the day of
today?
action today. Well,
Is it is it International Women's Day again?
no, it's the walkout today. I mean, I thought it was today. They said it was the 20th, but then I heard people talking about Friday being the day of action. So maybe there's 2 days. Maybe today's the walkout and then Friday's the day of action because
Oh, okay.
Friday makes more sense. I mean, you might as well make a long weekend out of it.
Right.
yeah, you
Well,
get
the
more
people
people.
walking out, they only have email jobs anyway. It's not like any of us are going to notice a difference in service or productivity.
Exactly. So how's things going with your podcast then? Let's get all caught up with Josh.
Um, I don't know. I mean, how do you describe how things are going with a podcast?
Well, okay, because you are in a kind of a
In a
precarious
niche.
situation away because you kind of are on you're right in the culture war. You're talking about these things that we talk about a little bit on the show, but we're
Yeah.
not always focused on that. And you're
Yeah.
kind of like hitting it hard. So I wonder, like in this day and age, because sometimes I wonder, I'm like, do we really want to be out here doing this right now? Because it's kind of a creepy time in some ways.
Yeah.
It's fascinating but creepy. So how are you handling the escalated culture war on your podcast? I guess.
The same way I think we've been handling it, and we is me and Kevin Hurley, the other half of it. He's the producer and tech guy. Um, Same way I think we've been handling it since we started. We just dove right in.
Yeah.
Um, they, the for those who don't know, the show looks at culture and politics, but we take a particular psychological approach to it. And the show has a thesis. And the thesis is that what's going on in society, the madness of the left that has become, it's not just the left became mainstream. So the madness became mainstream is an outgrowth of the same kind of distorted psychology that animates domestic abuse and child abuse. So, abusive parents, lying, gaslighting, pretending to be a victim when you're actually the perpetrator who's targeting somebody else. All this reversal, black is white, up is down, beautiful is ugly, all these things. This is all part of what I call cluster B psychology. And cluster B refers to a cluster of personality and character disorders that really derange people and make them unpleasant. And people know them by regular everyday names like excessive narcissism, the emotional instability that you see in particularly women and gay men with borderline personalities, that kind of stuff. So I see what happened in my childhood home, which is full of that crazy, has just exploded and has become mainstream culture on the left. So, we've never pulled punches on the show, and we don't pull punches now. So I guess we're kind of just going at it the same way.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. Yeah, exactly. Because we talked about you being on the show 4 years ago. The podcast is only 5 years old. So most of your podcast has been since you were on the show last
Yeah,
and
I
you're talking
suppose
about the
so. That's
culture war.
right. Yeah,
And we talked about the culture war back then, and now it seems to sort of have escalated. But the way you
yeah.
described it there is what's happening. I mean, you must feel somewhat I mean, I don't want to make it like you're vindicated or anything like that, but I mean, it's glaringly obvious now. The stuff you're talking about is happening in our face. Like,
I think it is, and I'm sorry for how this may sound. I don't do false modesty. I'm not trying to big myself up, but I was right. We were right, and we called it before. I think before any other show called this, and that's fine. Somebody has to say it first. I'm not the first person to figure out that cluster B and narcissism is really prevalent in American culture. I mean, Christopher Lasch was writing about this decades and decades ago in the culture of narcissism. There are many others. This is not a new idea that I came up with. It's just, I think our show, Disaffected, is the only one that I am aware of that has taken that as its central message and really ridden that hard. Because everything is multifactorial. There's not one single answer for why people are the way they are. But I think this is one of the main pillars. I think these personality distortions that have become normalized, this abusive psychology, is one of the major trunks that supports this whole thing. If we could cut that off, we'd make a lot of progress.
Why does it seem to affect the left disproportionately?
It's a good question, and it does affect the left disproportionately. It's not exclusive to the left, but no, this is not a 50-50, and it ain't 60-40, and it ain't 70-30. It's mostly the left. The short answer to that that I've come to is psychologically, people who have a tendency to see the world as a series of events that outside forces and outside people are doing to us or inflicting on us. The fancy term is external locus of control. So instead of taking responsibility for yourself and your situation, you point at a persecutor. You say, the bad man did this to me. The white man did this to me. The misogyny did this to me, right? It's everybody is outside victimizing you. People who have a tendency to see the world that way, and I used to be a person who saw the world that way. I was a leftist. Leftists are inclined to this. Cluster B is, in fact, does closely correlate with farther left politics. It's just the truth.
And hair color?
We could do a whole show on correlations and tells. There's a million of them. You guys know what they are. You see the same things I see.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start here. Let's piss off at least one person in your audience. Nose rings, personality disorder tell.
I hate to break it to them, but it's also not attractive.
No, it looks like shit. It looks stupid.
Hey, my wife has a nose ring.
That's okay. She doesn't have.
All right. It's been nice talking to you guys.
It seems to be the middle one, though, right? That's
that's what I'm talking.
What do you call it? It's like a pig snout ring, or
the septum, I think. Is it septum?
I
that's right.
That's what I know it as. I don't know if
that's the one Dvorak clarified too. He's like, it's the one in the middle.
Yeah.
Are you talking about John Dvorak on No Agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they still listen to your show too. I mean, I remember hearing after I heard you somewhere about 4 or 5 years ago, and then I heard Adam.
And then Adam mentioned it again. They've been very kind to mention the show, so they do great work.
Yeah,
it's really fun to. I admit it was only during the past 5 years that I've been doing the show that I actually sort of jumped into listening to podcasts as a genre. And I, was very new to, when you told me that, Graham, I was like, what is No Agenda? And I was like, oh, hey, that's that guy I watched on MTV when I was a teenager. And now he's doing this much more important work. And he said something. So it was kind of a thrill.
Yeah, and their model and the way they do it. I mean, it's a whole thing, and it's a whole thing in its own, whole ecosystem. It seems like as well. So, yeah, we kind of do a bit of a roundup, and we learned from them, a little bit of deconstruction and stuff like that. So we kind of do our own little roundup every week, kind of similar.
How long have you guys been doing this?
13 years, almost.
13 years.
Oh, okay.
2013. Yeah, we're coming up on 13 years. So this show, Grimerica Outlawed, is only since we repurposed another feed in 2020 or 2021. Darren, I think, pretty like 5 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, it would have been 20, right around now in 2020.
Yeah,
because we were getting canceled on our other show for talking about COVID, so we just had to decide whether we were going to completely torch the brand we had spent 8 years building, or we didn't want to shut up either. So we were like, well, we'll just start a new show.
Glad you didn't. Yeah, I have an inkling of what you probably went through. I mean, I wasn't doing this at the time, but yeah,
It's
it,
it's uh
it still just rocks me back.
it's
Like when I
crazy
look at
because
this, I'm like, this really happened. And you guys, almost everyone is acting like the last 5 years didn't happen.
yeah, I was arguing with some people on Substack, although it's much harder to argue on Substack than it is on X because I find it hard to find my way back to the thread that we were arguing on.
Yeah.
But they're just like, what, censorship? Like they need evidence of all this stuff, right? I'm arguing with obviously a leftist.
No, they don't. They say that you put evidence in front of them and they just pretend they don't see it.
Yeah.
Also, I would argue that's a feature, not a glitch.
What?
Not putting the argument in front of you. So that maybe by the time you can't find it for a second and then you're just like, fuck it. I'm just going to go do something else other than argue with leftists on the internet. This is the opposite of what Twitter's doing, right? They're just putting the argument in front of me as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Which just turns me into a troll. Which I know. I mean,
I know, but I feel like Substack sometimes hits a little deeper because I'm like just really disappointed at all the people towing the line on there. And I'm like, come on, you guys, you know better. We've been through since 2020. We've seen the censorship, we've seen the authoritarianism, and they're just like, blah, blah, blah. It's not happening. Like Canada's the best place to live. And they're sending me studies like, oh, Canada's the in the top 5 happiest places. I'm like, you believe fucking Yahoo News Canadians on this one?
I mean, I'm sorry, but like whether you're talking about the lunatic leftist Canadians or those Canadians who've been victimized by the lunatics, just across that spectrum, I don't see a lot of happy Canadians. I see Canadians on the left who are, they may say, oh, we have this wonderful quality of life. They're miserable neurotics and cluster Bs. And the people on the right who've been abused by them aren't happy by that either. So I don't know what that happiness is supposed to be all about.
Well, it just takes a while for that to work through, I feel like, because there was sort of just a general happiness in Canada, and it's never been great. If you could look through the legislation and look through the laws and say that it's been what it is, it's this just sort of slow march towards totalitarianism or authoritarianism or whatever it works out to be. But at the same time, it was so spread out and so big that it was never really at your front door. So there was just a general sort of happiness, I think, probably to the culture that I guess started to disappear a while ago as it became, it's almost like as the internet comes up, it almost coincides with that, where the veil kind of comes off at the same time, and these systems be able to start to find the ability to get closer to home.
What is it? How do you guys, I can give you an outside, I can give you your neighbor's perspective, right? But I'm not a Canadian. I've always lived in the North. I've always lived close to the border. I used to spend a lot of time going back and forth to various provinces, as most people in Canada did. I mean, most of my life growing up, didn't really think of Canada fully as a foreign country. It was more like our cousins next door, So I never thought that I would feel about the country the way I do now, which is I won't set foot in it. I'm not giving a dollar. I'm not stepping foot over into the border because I think it's lunatic. And I never expected that to happen. But I'm looking in from the outside and I'm watching, the misery and the totalitarian nightmare of Trudeau and his party. And then he finds himself at the sharp end of the stick and he has to go, and what do you guys get? You get Mark Carney. There's like, I thought for a minute that you had a chance, and then no. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm in Alberta, so it's sort of this unique thing where we're sort of
trying to carve your own path, right?
Trying to carve our own path. Now, I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but either way, it's extremely apparent at this point that there's a way bigger portion of the population that is not happy than we thought, right? Nobody expected there to be lineups in every town in Alberta and in Calgary and in Edmonton to sign this petition. I mean, they had 5 months to get the votes or to get the signatures. I'm pretty sure they got the signatures already. It just isn't going to.
Which petition are you talking about?
The petition to put separation on a separation referendum on the ballot in October.
What does that mean specifically? What does separation mean?
Alberta leaving Canada.
Becoming its own country?
becoming its own country.
Okay.
Starting the process of,
This is all new to me.
and the interesting thing is that what this has that most movements haven't in the past is that the Prosperity Project, the guys that are sort of headlining this, have met with your State Department twice, you know, so there seems to be some clear support from the US that I think is probably critical to this sort of thing. And if not critical, it at least helps, you know, because if the US isn't for it, it's just probably not going to happen, you know. But if you've got the US for it, it's still probably not going to happen, but it sort of starts to open it up. And then when you start to see the people that are coming out for this and lining up and doing all that sort of stuff, it's like, even if we don't push it over the finish line, politically, I feel more sort of secure here than before, because it's like, again, this thing where it's you kind of seen during the trucker convoy that sort of bolstered you up, because it's like, oh, wait a second, we're not, Graham and I aren't the only fucking ones in our town that think like this, or in the country. You know, there's enough people that think like this to go out to the side of a highway in the freezing cold to support it. So you can probably take the number of people you see and times it by 10, and then all of a sudden you're getting into like, we're like at 50-50 here, you know, at the end of the day, or way closer to it than we thought. And I think Alberta is sort of having that same realization right now, where it's like, even if we can't separate, it's going to prove the political will and the direction it's headed enough to, I think, I don't know. It's hard to say what's going to happen. It's sort of into uncharted territory, but for the first time, I think it's got enough steam that they're going to have no point but to pay attention to a certain level. And it also means we're probably a generation away, you know, because I've sort of changed my tune on where the Gen Zers and the kids are at over the last 4, 5, 6 months, where I used to think they were sort of lost and it was more of the same. I'm seeing in my kids and in the general public and this movement behind Fuentes, you know, not saying that I support the shit that comes out of his mouth, but there's sort of this clear thing that's showing that Gen Z and the kids younger than that, especially the males, are switching on at a level that I would have thought. I thought it was just like the bottom. We're at the point where the bottom just keeps falling out of it.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing that the Gen Zers, a certain proportion of them, and a bigger proportion of whatever the alphas or whatever calling them, it seems to be coming up in the back that they're not going to have it to a certain extent. And at a minimum, I mean, if I look at my kids' group chat, I might as well be looking at my group chat when I was a teenager. You know, all the words that they were told not to say are back with a vengeance. Like, it's almost like it's worse now because they tried to stop it.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. I'm glad to hear that. That's more optimistic than I would have thought.
Well,
I don't know that that's a total sample size, because, you know, my kids are my kids and I am who I am, and that definitely is going to sway some things, but it's still, the data is still there when you look at I'm starting to think that the banning of, because they're never doing shit to actually help us, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be vaccinating the kids and doing all the terrible shit they do. But so I refuse to believe that Australia is banning social media for 16 and under to protect kids. Okay. It's because they are losing fucking control of the message, and it's the only way they can see to try and keep it under wraps for as long as possible.
Well, did I hear or see within the past week or so that the UK and perhaps one or two other of those cuckolded European countries were actually floating the idea of banning Twitter/X?
It was going around, but they're saying in Canada now that that wasn't a real thing. The Canadian government basically came out with a statement and said they weren't considering it.
Okay, well, that doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't mean anything.
That means nothing.
The rumors were
in fact,
that
actually literally makes me believe it probably is real.
That's a good point.
They just lie, and they'll lie in the opposite. They just do reversals. So, okay, I'm going to keep keeping my eye on that.
But I mean, I want to answer Darren's question too, because, and I'm not black pilled about this, because I have hope for the future, but I think we got to go through some hell first. But But there's also a problem with Canada that we don't have the same level of by powerful polarization or something. Like you guys have a mechanism where the right can actually gain power and push back a little bit. And excuse the left and right labeling, like maybe it shouldn't even be used right now, but
Got to
that's
use some labels.
That's kind of all we got. So in the Canada, there isn't really like a force to, like, the right is really controlled op. There's not really much. There's no real parliamentary solution for Canada right now. Like
Okay.
there really isn't. I mean, Carney could do wonders if he just came to the center, which I don't. We keep hoping, oh, maybe he'll just like sort of fix stuff, but he can't. So Canada's kind of toast. And there's a bunch of brainwash, like there's a whole bunch of people back east that just follow what the media and the government tells them. So there's no getting through to them. Like there's, the West is full of maybe some people that are more independent and separatist. BC's kind of got its own mix of it all, but in the East, like we're stuck under boomers voting in the East for the Liberals. There's no getting out of it.
It's very much the same here. I mean, I recognize that we have the Republicans, the right in power right now, which almost didn't happen. I mean, I am personally convinced that at least the prior presidential election absolutely was tampered with. I don't believe Joe Biden legitimately won.
Yeah.
But so frankly, I think it's kind of a fluke. Or an extraordinary stroke of luck or providence that Trump was elected and that we took both of the legislative chambers. That won't last forever. But the same dynamic is going on here. I mean, the Northeast, where I live in the U.S., one of the oldest parts of the country, they call it New England, right?
Yeah.
That's you're describing the exact same people, the people back east who listen to whatever National Public Radio says, whatever CBC says, whatever the BBC says, whatever the New York Times says, the Boston Globe, the Toronto, or what is it, the Globe and Mail. It is the same people. They're just as you said, Graham, they're unreachable. They're unreachable. And this is a frustration. This is what I wish so many more well-meaning people would understand, talking to the people who, they can see that there's lots going wrong, but they're too well-meaning. They're still looking at the world like it's mostly made up of good folks. Now, I'm sorry, you got to get a little darker. You got to understand that it's darker right now. So many people still believe. I see it every day. They say this to me on Substack. They say it in the comments to my show. They say it on Twitter. If we could just get them the accurate information. And I'm like, no, stop believing that. There's no such thing as a low information voter. And this is not the controlling dynamic. You can, and many people have, put the information right in front of them. They simply will say it isn't real.
Yeah.
They are not amenable to facts and evidence. It's not that they misunderstand. They don't misunderstand. They don't recognize facts and evidence because they're not thinking, they're emoting. It's all emotion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've come to I've come to this acceptance phase where, like, we can't change it that way. Like, it's not going to happen.
You can't educate them. This is not an education deficit. I mean, yes, we do have that. Both American and Canadian school children are astonishingly ignorant. I mean, pig ignorant. Like, many of them are completely illiterate. Most of them are functionally illiterate, but many of them are completely illiterate. They cannot comprehend. They literally can't even read a paragraph. I mean, we are now at the place, you guys, where I'm seeing it all over the place. Students, middle school students, high school students, even college students are complaining that their teachers and professors are assigning a whole page essay, one whole page. They are talking about it the way I used to say, really, a 10-page paper, and they're going to make me write a whole page. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, it's getting pretty bad. So I think we have to get through the next phase before we their failure. My theory is kind of like their failure at the next implementation of whatever tyranny they're going to try. Is their failure at that is going to wake enough people up where we're going to have to find a balance of freedom and living with technology and all this stuff. We're going to have to kind of get through this next hump.
Yeah.
I guess it's just whether they let it happen or not, or if they're going to fight. They're going to fight this new world order tooth and nail. I mean, it sure looks like in the States if that's any microcosm of what's going to happen, because I do see like what's happening in Minnesota, for example. Like, I don't know how deep we want to get, but what's happening in Minnesota feels like a microcosm for what could explode, honestly, almost globally. Like, you can almost pick the sides right now. You can almost see how this could turn into a civil war that turns into a world war. Maybe the world war manifests as civil wars all over, because after seeing what's happening in the States, and I know some of it's through, misguided viral videos and all that kind of stuff. Like, some of it's manipulated, but, I'm seeing enough of people attacking innocent people here, asking for papers, and not the side you'd think would be asking for papers, but the other side. Well, like for example, people approaching, 5 white guys in a restaurant, calling them ICE when they're not ICE, or asking for proof that. I'm not trusting all these videos, but it is kind of highlighting something that's happening, where I picture it moving towards the rest of the U.S. and Canada, where you kind of got to be a little subtle on who you support. Otherwise, they're trying to give themselves license for violence. I mean, we just read a Reddit post on the show last night where they're just straight up saying, like, make the U.S. feel like it's okay to be violent. Like, they're advising Canadians to get prepared and do all this. And I mean, it's only a Reddit post, but they sure think that violence is the answer, which is kind of weird, because that's kind of breaking.
While they claim that they're so against violence, and they're worried about our violence. Yeah. Of course, this is an example of the thesis of my show. Yeah. This is the reversal of reality. This is the narcissistic reversal. The projection and reversal. Everything, every negative character trait, every venal or wicked motivation that lives inside them, they just say, that's you. You have that. You want to kill me. No, actually, Becky, you want to kill me. And I can see it and hear it in your voice,
So do you, Darren, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention, I listened to Carney's speech this morning at, what's it called? Davos.
Oh, the one where he got a standing ovation apparently at the end, or?
Yeah, but when I listened to it, like I was going over it with Graham earlier, I mean, when I listened to that speech, it sounds like Trump for boomers. I mean, he's talking about taking the sign out of the window. He's talking about building at home again. He's talking about.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear any of this. So.
But everyone's freaking out because it sounds like he's towing the line to a certain extent. But when I'm listening to what he's saying underneath, I'm like, man, it just sounds like it's like a slow prep, in my opinion. It's like the deal's already made, and it's like now we're in this slow, because there's like making the deal, and then you got to get the public behind it. Otherwise, it's just not going to work out. So it's starting to feel like it's like the reveal stage, where they slowly got to reveal more and more, and whether it's
what do you think what's the thing that is being prepared for?
I think Carney's in place to dismantle Canada. I mean, he's the perfect guy to liquidate the assets of the failed state of Canada, because at this point, I don't see any possible way of putting it back on the tracks. And he's the perfect guy for the job. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that he moved his company to the US like 2 months before he took the job.
Well, and Trump and him have a very weird relationship. Even Trump was like, "Oh yeah, he should be going to make deals with China."
Trump helped him get elected. That's the other big elephant in the room. If Trump just shuts the fuck up, then Polivier is our prime minister right now with a majority. But and you can't tell me that Trump is not smart enough. We're talking about the guy who is the fucking master of persuasion. Right? That's his fucking thing. He's a persuader. He's a negotiator. We had Scott Adams on to sort of talk about it, how there's this, that's what everyone thinks he's crazy, but it's this sort of deal making thing where he's big and boisterous. But so all that just to say, there's no way you could convince me that Trump is naive enough to think that the stuff he was doing about the 51st state and all that stuff isn't to prop up Carney with the boomers. You can't convince me that he actually wanted the conservatives in power here, because everything that he said and came out of his mouth for the 2 months before our election did nothing but prop Carney up further and further and further. And it was almost like he would come out and say certain inflammatory things just at the key moments to sort of push it over the top.
So my only problem with that, I really like that, except that Carney is the leading edge of the net zero climate grift. Like, he really is like one of the top guys in this whole ideology. And Trump, and I believe that the fight is real between Trump and the WHO and all the, I mean, they left 66 of these organizations. I mean, sure, it can all be theater and it can all be fake, but it feels like a real battle of factions over dominance here. So Carney being on that faction and Trump being the one that's wiping all that away, it seems to me like Carney has to then accept that he's got to let that net zero thing go if he's gonna do what Darren's talking about. So it seems too weird to me that.
But if it was always just a scam anyway, then what's the difference? Then it's just like the jig is up. If it's because then you just got to take as what side does Carney fall in? Is Carney part of the like death cult that wants to actually depopulate and do all that sort of stuff? Or was he just trying to make a shitload of money? And now it's like the change in world order is the jig is up. I mean, let's be honest. He ain't going to be making money with this climate grift for a whole lot longer. It seems like at the very least, that tide is starting to turn, even with, I guess, some of the left. It's sort of like, I don't think they can keep the lid on this climate thing a whole lot longer. But so I don't know where I fall in on that, but you can just see the thing where he's just been corrupt this whole time, because you got to remember, Brookfield also owns a bunch of pipelines. They own a pipeline in the US. They own a pipeline in Brazil. They're doing all sorts of fossil fuel things at the same time.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Josh?
Oh, well, I don't know. I never know. I have a really hard time figuring out the line between. Okay, so people talk about conspiracy theories, right? And they'll use that phrase, and almost every time somebody uses that phrase, they mean a derisive connotation.
Yeah.
They mean to communicate to you this silly thing that some people think is real, but obviously only stupid retards think that's real. Yeah. That's usually the connotation behind that. And I'm not trying to communicate that. Conspiracies are real. I mean, every time two people get together and make a plan with each other that they don't share with other people, that's a conspiracy by definition. I mean, this is, it's not, conspiracies never happen. Yeah, they do. They happen all the time, right? But I have a hard time figuring out when something looks like a conspiracy or a concerted effort and plan. I have a hard time figuring out whether it's a consciously Machiavellian step-by-step. So we're going to apply this pressure and then we're going to see what happens. Depending on what happens here, then we're going to use this tactic. That's a very conscious Machiavellian sort of way of going about it. Is it that, or is it that these are just tendencies and emotional inclinations that certain types of people have, that when they all get together, it all coalesces into the same thing? So, Darren, you're talking about, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what I heard you saying was you thought that Trump was kind of more methodical about what he said and how he said things about Canada to get to a specific outcome. You may be right about that, but I don't have any idea whether it's that or if it's just that man running off at the mouth again along the lines that he's inclined to run his mouth to.
That's kind of where I'm at, where my thinking is with him too. But what I've noticed with him is that on a long enough timeline, some of the crazy shit that comes out of his mouth turns out to be just a crazy way of saying something he didn't quite understand properly.
Okay.
Like the big example I use is when everyone was screaming at him because he said to drink bleach, right? To get rid of the COVID stuff. You're going to get the light in there and that's going to do this. But then, the papers come out a couple months later that talk about this photo thing and this photo that. It's just like his simplified New York
Yeah.
construction way to express this stuff that he's been told in meetings that are way beyond our
Sure.
level. And he's just got a bonehead. And he does say some shit that I guess does turn out to be blatantly false. But if it's almost like this weird Alex Jones effect, right? Where everything he's saying sounds crazy, but on a long enough timeline, he's right more than he's wrong.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah. I've seen that too.
So when I hear 51st State and Greenland and this kind of crazy stuff, I'm just like, yeah,
Greenland's a great example.
Not
because
next week, but give it fucking 10 years, and it's just going to have slowly happen in ways that weren't sort of making everyone freak out, and it just sort of happened.
Well, I think it's happening with Greenland right now. Because what was it? My sense of time is severely distorted over the past 5 years. I often have a very difficult time telling you whether I heard something last year or 6 years ago. This is new for me, and I don't think I'm going senile, but our social media has made my perception of time much more tenuous than it used to be. But it was last year, or the year before, when Trump first started talking about or floating the idea of annexing Greenland, and it sounded so ridiculous and so, but it's now being hello kitty. I love this kitty. Hello kitty. Yes, yes. I could see exactly what Kitty was going to do.
Yeah.
But now it's being talked about seriously. Whether or not it'll happen, I don't know. But it's now part of public policy debate and not as a joke. And that's only like a year and a half.
Yeah, and I would argue the deal's already made. And right now we're just in the theater for the pleb part of it. It's like, well, we can't just give you Greenland, man. These people and those people, and this is going to happen. So that's just like a conspiracy in a back room where they're like, all right, well, how do we get? I'm convinced that half of the meetings they have is how to get the public on board with it. Okay, how do we sway public opinion to the point that this is acceptable? A, in the USA, B, in Greenland, and C, in Denmark.
And then in Denmark, though, like the Denmark, I love them being really acting like they're all tough. Like, Denmark is not going to tolerate this, and I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. It's all just
you're just Denmark.
And I don't know how they're going to pull the rug out yet, whether it's going to be Greenland's going to vote and win or, but I'm convinced something's going to happen that the USA is going to end up with Greenland in some way, shape or form. And it's not going to be to public outcry.
But in the meantime, it's going to be guarded a little bit better, and they're going to have military presence there.
Well, there's that too. You could argue that he's already won. I mean, that's the thing I was saying on social media the other day when they're like, well, these people are sending boats and these people are sending boats. And I'm like, well, if you listen to what he said the whole last term, it was that. It wasn't that he wanted Greenland. It was that he wanted us to do our fucking part, get some fucking boats over there and start sharing the burden of the rules-based system that the USA had now suddenly taken on all the burden for. And now this time it's almost like, okay, well, that didn't work. They didn't listen. They didn't do anything. What if I just say I'm going to take fucking Greenland? I mean, it sure got some boats and stuff over there quick, right? It's just like everyone's talking about securing Greenland from the USA now, but it's like, I can see a system where that is just like a weird reverse psychology to get the kid to clean his room.
I think what doesn't get talked about enough is that we have been in a war and the West has been infiltrated. And it's collapsing, whether it's collapsing under its own stupidity or intentionally, I don't know, but it's collapsing. There's nothing going right in the Western world, Canada, UK, the EU. It's not doing well. The US the immigration is out of control. The US has been infiltrated by, a bunch of criminals.
I think the infiltration, Graham, tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but I think the The infiltration, first of all, it started a very long time ago. It started early in the 20th century. It's a communist infiltration.
Yeah, yeah,
That's what I genuinely believe that. I don't know how you guys see it.
yeah. Well, that's how it's manifesting right now, for sure, with the oppressed and the oppressor. Like the psychology that you were talking about fits in with the communist psychology. It really does. So,
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of my point. Is that how do you, like, if Trump knows what he knows, and you need, and you do want security for the states, and you've been infiltrated completely by the NGO web, Soros, the communists, all this, the
All the
prisoners from
Bezimov stuff,
Venezuela.
all the Bezimov stuff is well underway too, right? I forget what his tenets were, but we're like
Yep.
well into that process at the same time.
Demoralization.
Yeah, demoralization. Yeah.
So then how do you, like, because somebody mentioned the chat there, it's not America, it's the hemisphere now. Well, yeah, because that maybe is the way that you need to protect things. And maybe he's got to deal with China and Russia to go into this multipolar world and take care of your own hemispheres. I mean, it kind of makes sense to me in a lot of ways. I'm not saying I agree with it, but with what other options were there when the West is going to collapse? I mean, they put in their document that Europe's only going to be around, like it's only going to be Europe for another 20 years. Then it's not Europe anymore. If they
Whose
don't do
document
something.
is this?
This is the security strategy document, basically, like the
From
fortress
what organization?
from Trump's national security. It's from
Okay.
like the White House.
Thank you.
And they're basically just saying, like, here's how we're going to handle national security. We're going to solidify. We're going to protect the Western Hemisphere, and you can't be doing these nefarious things in that hemisphere. We're going to take care of it. And I mean, it's, I don't want to get too deep into that, but it just, because you're kind of approaching the culture war from a psychological standpoint, I wonder if like, it seems like a real fight to me. It just doesn't seem like problem, reaction, solution. Like, it feels real. It feels like this communist infiltration is manifesting now in the civil war that's happening in the States.
And I'm glad. Thank you for saying civil war, and not civil war like, because I do believe that we are in a civil war.
Yeah.
It's not hot yet. It's not. I mean, it's warm. There are some hot spots, but it's not declared open gun hostilities. It may well become that, but yeah, we're in a cultural civil war and have been for a while. I'm not going to put a start date on it. I don't know, but I've never seen anything like it. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. No, I don't think anybody has who's born and raised in Canada or the U.S. Or Great Britain, or even many European countries. It's weird.
So I guess the question is this a continuation of the same, or is this finally a line in the sand? Because I agree with you completely on it's always been communism. Everything else is just weird. I don't know if you follow James Lindsay, but at least on that part of his work,
Yep.
I really agree with him that he's like, this is all just different shades of collectivism and communism.
Yes, he's right on that.
Coming in. So are we seeing this Trump administration and the new right in the US? Is this actually the first pushback against that? Is this Fuentes movement and all this? Is this like the seedlings of an act? Because the last time we pushed back against the communists, it took the Nazis. So, I mean, is that what this turns into again?
That's a damn good question. I don't know. So, boy, if you look back at U.S. history, and I don't know as much about this as I should, but I grew up with, and I spent most of my adult life with what I think are fairly typical American liberal ideas about the world. And again, these are mainstream things. These are things that most normal people are supposed to believe, whether or not they vote for Reagan or for, for Mondale, whatever. We, Americans generally, were taught in school and know that Senator Joseph McCarthy and the House Un-American Activities Committee was a really bad man. And he pointed a finger at a lot of nice people like Lucy, who makes the Lucy show. He was mean to her, and he thought there were communists everywhere. But he was just a really bad man, and none of that was true. Like, I'm using the baby voice because we think about this like we were fucking babies. We're like, oh, it was all bad. Well, you know what? I think Senator McCarthy was right. He was right. He was 90% right. Whether, sure, he went too far on some things, but he was right that we had been infiltrated by communism. Hollywood was infested with pinkos, and it still is today. They didn't go nearly far enough. They shut him down. They finally shut him down. But he was absolutely right, and we are paying the price for it. So internally in America, at least half the population will not. They used to believe all the things that I believed, which was that was terrible and McCarthy was an abusive person. No, he was trying to save the freaking country, and people abused him for it. And I'm seeing it all over the place now. I worry that well, I mean, if we can't fight this, if the United States can't route out that infiltration and can't get ourselves back on track to being the kind of free and sovereign country in a Western sense that we have tried to be, it's going to be our own population that subverts us. And I think it's even more likely. It's even worse, I think, for Canada. It's worse in the UK.
Yeah, yeah.
But we have that problem here too.
Yeah.
And